Hello, Amy. How you doing?
Hey, good, Pierre. I like that new intro.
Yeah, I know. Just kind of
Get
bopping to
pumped.
the tunes in the background here. Oh, so welcome everyone to another edition of Learn Live, and today we are taking a look at monitoring the health of your Azure virtual machines by using Azure Metrics Explorer and Metric Alerts and Azure Monitor, and the point is you can get monitoring for your VMs in a multiple different ways, and I think Amy and I were go through most of them.
Right.
Um, okay,
So
so
besides what?
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said besides tools you might already use on premises, Azure has a lot of built-in functionality that's even free. So we're going to show you all about it.
That's right, because the point is you can't successfully operate your environment unless you know what's going on. So if you're using well, the tools that are built in, most of them are like included in your subscription. Of course, there's some that it's pay as you go. But if you have your own tools, your own set of tools, and or you're using a partner's tools, something like Datadog or any other like that, just make sure that you're monitoring and you're configuring your environment to get notified when something happens so that you can react properly. So with that being said, Amy, I think we are live and people can follow along. Which
That's great.
are we at?
Yeah, they can scan that QR code or follow along at the https ak.ms learn live 2023-01-26A. And this is part of that Azure Core IS Study Hall series.
That's right. We always make such wonderful AKA links, right?
Yes.
It just rolls off the tongue.
And the titles, at least this one's easier. But when we had the like Azure Hybrid Learn Live something, I couldn't say it for the life of me. So I'm glad it's just IS Study Hall series.
Yeah. I'm not sure if our monitor is live. However, if you have comments, if you have questions, would be more than happy to answer them. So please ask them in. Actually, Ryan is producing the session and will be passing those questions to us. So feel free to add and let us know if you have any question, if we're going too fast, or even if it's just something related to monitoring VMs. We'd love to be able to share with you the information that we have.
Definitely. Don't stump us.
All right. As I said, this is live and interactive, so ask your questions and we'll go. I guess, forgot to advance the slide. And of course, today, the learning objectives, like what do we want to get out of this next hour-ish amount of time? We want to be able to know how to identify metrics, diagnostic data, how we can collect it from our virtual machines, what do we do with them, so how do we configure that, but also how do we configure specific ways to be notified when something happens, because I know most of you are not sitting at your desk staring at the screen waiting for that little red pop-up to say, hey, something's going wrong. You want to be able to be notified. So how do you use that monitoring data and to get notified, but also to diagnose when you have some issues? That makes sense?
I mean, I'm always staring at my portal. I don't know about you, but waiting.
I used to. Back in the days of back in my day, the early days of SMS and the System Center Configuration Manager. When you add alerts and stuff like that, you would configure them and then you'd wait. You'd set one up to see if it worked, and then you just sit and wait.
The test page, right? Get a page.
It was like this hurry up and wait type of configuration. You do all this config and then you just sit there and wait for it to happen.
Yeah. Something break, please. Yeah.
Well, you want something to break when you're testing it, but you don't want something to break when you're in production.
Exactly.
So we've got a few people online. We've got Stefan, we've got Everett. I
Great.
think I saw earlier Fuel Snavel in Onoriodun. I
Ooh.
am really butchering that one, but welcome everyone.
Yes, thank you.
So introduction. This whole learn live is based on learn modules that we have that are all free to you. Most of them have what do we call sandbox machines attached to them, so that you can actually try this stuff as you're learning it in your environment. And we try to do some kind of like scenarios around that. So the scenario on this one is you're the administrator of an enterprise. I wrote on the slide enterprise, then I went back and read the learn live, and I'm supposed to be the administrator for a website for a band.
We're in a band, Pierre. I tweeted about it. I tried to get a name. Like,
Yeah, I know. I'm not. I can't play an instrument to save my life, so
you could be lead screamer.
no, I'm the roadie at the back, just sitting on the rock star cases and waiting for the show to be over.
Well, we could be a certain ticket reseller that their website goes down, and they should have some monitoring in place.
No, we don't want to be in that business these days.
True.
Anyway, so you want to be able to monitor and the behavior of your workloads. In Azure, and I mentioned in the intro that there's multiple ways of doing that. Number one is right into your virtual machine overview page in the portal. But we also have Azure Monitor, and Azure Monitor is a bit more of a, how can I say, a full meal deal of monitoring, because it's unified monitoring of all your metrics and your logs. So if you've got a custom built application that you have at home in your enterprise, something you've built from scratch, it's nothing that's off the shelf, and you've made your own logs, you can actually teach Azure Monitor how to ingest those logs, and it stores those in a separate database. So you've got your metrics database, and then you've got your logs database. It's all underpinned by Log Analytics Workspace. And then it uses those metrics and those logs in terms of applying certain diagnostic filtering and diagnostic, let's say filtering. It's more like patterns. So because it's a lot of it is our software, like Windows and SQL and web apps, like our product groups give us a lot of information as to what we should be looking for or looking at when something is going wrong. So it creates those patterns. And also everybody at Microsoft or all of our customers that open cases, if we realize that a case comes back over and over and over, this becomes a pattern that is driven into our funnel that becomes at some point insights. So if we know that a certain amount of event in your event viewer, for example, of a specific type with a specific description, eventually that will lead to a problem. Well, that becomes a pattern. That pattern is applied to your data that's stored in your metrics database or your logs database. Then when that is detected, that pattern is detected, then things are either you're being notified or a workflow is started. So we have a big workflow or a rich workflow integration ecosystem. We've got partners that tie into it. You've got your own stuff that tie into it, or ISCM like Azure Sentinel. Sorry, I was having a brain fart there for a second. So we have got Azure Sentinel.
Microsoft Sentinel, isn't it?
Is it Microsoft Sentinel? I
Yeah.
lose track of when we change the names so often.
Microsoft Defender, Sentinel, yeah.
Enterprise 2012 version 2.
Right. But it is cool that we have those APIs to hook in. So even if you are using something like Sentinel or some other product, you can tie into Azure Monitor or create. I always liked at my former workplace, we'd create incidents. I mean, it was nice, but if an alert went off, it also create a ticket right away. So you can use that as well.
Well, the ticket is also one thing, because we're all IT pros and we're all into, or some of us are developers as well. Not me. I can't code myself out of paper bag, but I do write some pretty cool PowerShell script or Bash script to support the operation of the environments that I use to manage. Well, those can be wrapped into a run book or into an action and integrated into the workflow. So it doesn't have to be integrating into a third party or a separate system that is something you deploy or integrate with. It could be your own code and your own response to something like that. Like the very basic example is your system drive is about to be full. Well, maybe you have a PowerShell script that just goes and flushes temporary files.
I mean, you could auto expand too. Just keep expanding. It's an auto expand.
If it's a virtual machine, yeah, you can expand the disk or the storage account and the disk. That's right.
Yeah.
So multiple ways we
can keep doing
this.
that. But
pardon me?
Is it not that you'd want to keep expanding for the sake of expanding? You know.
Well, that's the great thing with the data-driven insights is you can say if it happens once, do this. But if it happens again within that amount of time, then you raise an alert.
Right.
That's all part of the workflow integration. And as mentioned, that metric and those logs can be populated from your application or operating system, the Azure resources themselves, your subscription, your tenant, or your custom sources. And then it feeds that ecosystem I was talking about, the insights, but also ways to visualize that. And I think you're going to give us a demo on how we create specific dashboards, how you analyze, responds, and integrate. So that's all part of the unified monitoring that Azure Monitor provides.
Right.
And I am sure I'm looking at the questions here. The no talent band, fuel snavel.
Oh, ouch.
It's pretty appropriate on my end. I don't know about you, Amy, but it's pretty appropriate on my end.
I mean, I can make like never. I was gonna go on a side. You know, my friend and I will do like those mouth band noises, like you know. So we think we're talented and we should go on the road, but probably not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, okay. I'll just stick to my day job.
Yes, me too. We are on time. Okay, so monitoring the health of our virtual machines. When we look at that, there are certain challenges. Number one is figure out what and how to monitor. And I will make a caveat here that if you're using Azure Monitor and you're actually storing that data into a log analytics workspace, that's a part that's not free. Okay. If you select every single performance metric and every single event to track and store for every single server you have in your environment, you're going to be very surprised when you get your bill at the end of the month, because ingesting all that data will cost you some money. So it's very important that you figure out what and how to monitor your environment. So that's a clear challenge when monitoring VMs.
Sure.
How to clear up the issue when the VM, when it actually fixes itself. So there's new capabilities in our alerting where it'll say if that condition is no longer applicable, then resolve the issue. So you can create the ticket through your integration, Amy, but then you can have the system close the ticket if the event has gone away.
As long as I get credit that I handled the issue, that's cool.
Yeah. I am just checking to see if we have any questions. Okay, we're good to go. All right, so troubleshoot how to guest level. So when we're looking at creating or monitoring VM, there's also two things. One is how do you monitor the VM itself, like the characteristics of the VM. So the container, the storage account, the networking, like everything that has to do with the VM. But then there's the OS that's running on the VM. These are two different things, and these are two different types of collection and monitoring that you have to do. So we can figure that out. Identify hotspot, determine whether or not the backend dependencies are affecting. So it might be something that's coming up as an alert in the VM, but it's actually caused by something else. So getting all of that info is hard. So we have to figure out how to get this done. Actually, for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right into a very kind of live demo. I'm kind of jumping a little off script here because nobody wants to look at slides all the time. If we're looking at a specific VM, we know that there's multiple ways of monitoring this. The easiest way is to just go into the VM and the monitoring tab in the Azure portal. And the monitoring tab will actually show you everything you need to do. Yep. The monitoring tab is there. Then there's multiple monitoring insight in your side venue in terms of insights, alerts, metrics, and we'll go into those more in detail a little bit later. But that's just one way of doing it. You can also use services like Azure Monitor that give you a lot more flexibility and a lot more granularity into what you can do in terms of getting insights. But not only that, but detection, triage, and diagnostic of the stuff that's happening in your environment, and so on. So,
but it is nice to have that that overview on your VM. You just go over there if you want to quickly glance at something like, oh, is the CPU getting pegged?
Yeah, because like you're getting a call from one of your stakeholders or customers or whatever, and it's like the site is slow because that's always useful. It's slow.
I love that one. Yeah,
it's slow. So you go and you check, and the first thing you can go to the overview and go and say, oh, CPU is pinned at 98%.
That can make
maybe it is slow. Maybe something's going on. Or if you see nothing, well, is it just perception? And you start investigating a little further. Anyway, so you can do a health diagnostic by multiple ways. You can have health monitoring issues in terms of how it booted. Like, did it create an error? Sometimes when you a physical machine, you would boot a server, and also this error would come up while it's booting, and then it goes into Windows, and you go like, "What was that?"
Right.
But when you're at the console, you can see it. If you're booting a virtual machine, half the time you're not seeing that boot process. So did something happen? Especially on the Linux box, when you're booting a Linux server and you see all of the drivers that are loading, and then all of a sudden, as that wall of green is going across and then you get that big red section.
Red, yeah.
How do you monitor? Eh?
I'd be like, that's not good. That was the nick.
Yeah, that was not good. But how do you get to it? Right. Anyway, so those are all pieces that you can do in terms of monitoring your VMs.
Right.
And of course, there's the basic metrics for your VM in terms of CPU usage, network traffic, OS disk usage, boot success, blah, 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 blah. There's hundreds of those specific metrics, and those are built on the VM itself, not the guest OS. So this is something we have to be careful with. When you're looking at those metrics, okay, you want to make sure that what you do what you want to do is create a scenario where you've got what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Like, especially if you're running give you another example here, a scale set where you have multiple VMs. You want that sweet spot, because if it's, let's say, in between 50 and 70%, that's your sweet spot. If it goes above that for your CPU usage, that means that your scale set as a whole is overloaded. So you may want to spin up a new instance or another instance to your scale set, and then have that load spread over greater machines. But then if it drops to 20%, now it's below what your sweet spot is, or your threshold and your trend. So now you have to shed instances so that you don't end up paying for machines that you don't need. So that's the thing. You need to
Right.
know when your VMs are reaching their limits, and when we say limits, is upper limits and lower limits. So you want to establish what that sweet spot is, and monitor that's when what happens if it goes outside of that. Do you get notified? Do you automatically start something? How do you control the operational cost? By sizing accordingly based on those trends and based on those metrics. Make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, that could be like a code yellow, like we're getting there, but not hitting it yet, and then red
Yeah,
alert. Okay.
and it's important to, when we're setting up alerts and notification, to not go too far.
Right. Then people
If
ignore it.
exactly, like back when I used to work with system center configuration, operations manager.
Ooh,
If
yeah.
you turned on everything on a management pack, then you start getting all of these errors and all of these notification. And the first thing you do is you read them all, and then you
Yeah.
delete them because it's informational. So, and
Right.
then it becomes a warning, but this is the 100th time you've seen it. So eventually you create a rule to just delete them, or you move them to another folder. And when
Or
something actually goes wrong, you don't see it.
right. I know. Yeah, that's what you don't want to make everyone numb to alerts. So you definitely have to make sure it's the right, is it important and is it actually something wrong? Like, is it going outside of that pattern
Yeah.
and outside of your comfort zone of running 75%, like you said? So,
Okay. So we've looked at the virtual machine itself. There's other ways of doing that. In the metrics section, you can actually graft specific metrics and from the machine itself or the VM. So you can. This is not something you would do on you can, something you want to say, okay, oh, I want to investigate this right now. So you go to the metrics and you apply. If it's something you know you're going to look at often, then you kind of pin that to a dashboard. And I think you're going to show us how to do that later, right?
yep,
Okay,
we're going to cover
perfect.
that.
We're going to cover that. Then you end up with insights, and those insight is what I was talking about. Those are patterns based on AI, based on everything else that we have in our environment, the machines that we run as a company, but also the cases and the feedback and telemetry we get from our customers as well. Just the telemetry allows us to build those insights that we apply to your data, so that we know when something's going to go wrong.
Before your boss knows. You want to know before the boss or
Yes.
the employees, customers that you're serving. You don't want them to tell you there's an issue. You want to know there's an issue.
Yeah. So Gavin wants to know why we used an Azure VM, because that's what this section is about.
Right. I mean, that's a different topic.
It's a different topic. Why do you
Right.
use a VM versus
Yeah.
a PaaS or a built or a cloud native solution? Actually,
Right.
this is a very, very good question. And I've always said to my customers that, like, when you migrate workloads to Azure in a VM, this should be step one.
Yes.
Once you're in the cloud, if you want to get advantage of more cloud solutions or cloud goodness, such as like auto scale and not have to worry about managing the infrastructure, but only managing the workload, then your step two is to take that workload that's running in a VM and then re-platform this into a cloud native solution.
Right. And
Maybe.
that's why we're using cloud native tools to monitor the Azure VM. I mean, there are other tools it's way out of scope, like Azure Arc to monitor an AWS VM or Google, VM. But
Okay.
yeah, for the sake of this, we're in Azure and we're using Azure monitoring, so we have an Azure VM.
So Gavin, I hope this was the optic or the direction you were going with that question. I wasn't quite sure. I just kind of caught it the corner of my eye here on YouTube. All right. Also, boot diagnostic. We talked about this. We want to be able to see We want to be able to see the boot diagnostic, that's like that splash of red as we mentioned earlier. So it does, the system can set up to like take screenshots of the VM from the hypervisor version. So the console itself, there are ways to get access to that console as it boots. But it's not something that you want to do on a regular basis. It's something you do when you're investigating a problem.
I'm just glad we have that, because I remember you go in blindly, like it booted. I can't get to the console because it's a virtual machine. I don't know. I have a console session.
Well,
So
when you were running it locally, like on Hyper-V or VMware and stuff like that, there were ways that you can actually RDP into it with the console property or a flag on your command line.
Yeah, hey? I think it's MSTSC. I forget. I don't know. I'm trying to go way back.
and then you're getting that information and you see the console. But if you're running in the cloud, where that machine could have rebooted in the middle of the night because of an update or an automated service that you or somebody else in your environment rebooted it, and something happened, and you didn't catch that console, there are ways of doing that. So in the Learn Live, in the Learn module, there's an exercise for this one to set up you boot Diagnostic. So in that exercise, it'll take you through, first of all, how to create a storage account and a VM. So follow along, go to the Learn module. There is a sandbox there, so you have to log in with a Microsoft account. It'll create a sandbox for you to do the exercise in. What it'll do is it'll create the storage account, create a basic metrics for the VM, or view the basic metrics for the VM, and then view the boot diagnostic and figure out how to configure it, what the options are for the boot diagnostics. I'm just making sure that we have, and yes, Gavin, you can use those as servers. They are servers. For a web developer, it's better for the VM or a server. The VM is a server, so we can talk about that a little bit later. All right, so Amy and I have taken this habit of recording demos for when we're doing events like that, whether they're online or in person, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we can cut out the parts where the spinning donuts goes through. So we don't have to wait, because sometimes it's hurry up, set up the configuration and wait half an hour for data to start coming. Number two, this is the internet, so you never know what connection is going to be going on. And number three, we know that it's going to work.
Exactly. Don't roll the dice with demo gods.
So we're running the dice with demo gods. So we're going to jump into the my first video. So Mr. Producer, if we come to kick off the video. So in this one, what I've done is, let me see. What I've done is the same as what you could do in the sandbox in Learn Live, but I've done it against my own subscription. So number one is that command that's I'm actually setting my context to my own subscription. But now once that's done, that'll go, and all of the steps are identified in the Learn module and all of the commands. So you can go and try it. So I can set a variable for my storage names because it has to be unique. So I have a random name. I create a resource group, which in your sandbox would be automatically created. And then I will start.
Oops. Just to interject really quick. Yeah, in the sandbox, it's nice because you can copy and paste the commands for you. So,
which is actually what I did is I cut and paste those documents into a notepad and then just put in the name of my resource group.
Oh, I thought you were coding. Come on.
I told you earlier, I'm no developer, so I'm a cut and paste and an internet pillaging code person. All right, so now I'll create the storage account, and the storage account is going to be used for me to store my diagnostic data. That's one of the reasons why we're setting it up ahead of time.
Mhm.
So it's running, it's installing or creating that storage account in the location that we've done it. Okay, that's done. So I'm clear. And then the next step is going to be for me to create a VM that we're going to use for diagnostic. But I'm creating it, first of all, in my resource group, but also the boot diagnostic storage, if you can see like one of the items. And I'm pointing to that storage account variable that we created 2 steps ago. So now it goes on and starts running. When you're deploying things like that in Azure CLI or Azure Shell, you will be getting notices where if we're planning to change some of the items that are there. So in this case, it's telling you that the new VMs will be automatically set to standard IP versus basic IP and so on. So now my machine has been deployed and my power state is VM is running. So I know that my VM is actually up running. So I'm going to go to the portal, go to my virtual machines, find the one that I just deployed, which is that monitored Linux VM. And in it, as you can see, I've got right out of the overview, I can see the VM info, but I can go to the monitoring section and where all of those items we talked about in the intro were. The insights, the alerts, the metrics, diagnostic settings, logs, connection, and so on. So if I go to metrics and then this one, under metrics namespace, you can see it's virtual machine. So we're looking at the specs or the metrics of the VM, not the guest. And then percentage CPU at max. And then I'll put another one, which is going to be inbound flow. You go to average. I can also set the timeline. So do I want to look at the last 48 hours or the last 30 minutes? So if somebody calls you and says, hey, I've had an issue with my machine, this is the quickest way you can go and say, all right, I want to see the last 7 days. And has it been pinned at 90% for the past 7 days, or has it gone up and down as needed? Okay, I'm just checking make sure we don't have any more questions here. Lucas, is it possible to collect data from Event Viewer through Azure Monitor? Yes, it is possible. That's because, as we're talking about this like right now, is the difference between collecting metrics from the VM and connecting metrics and data from the guest operating system. And Amy, you're going to tell us about that a little later, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Lucas, just stay tuned. Amy will take you through it in just a little bit. All right. So now I can see the info that I have in my metrics. But in terms of boot diagnostics on this one, because I've already set it up, I can see that I have my screenshots of my boot system. So if I had had a problem, it would have given me the screenshot of where the problem was. And in this one, I'm just going to reconfigure it to use a managed storage account to store its data. It goes out, it creates the managed storage account, sets up not documentation, but setup. Now, if I refresh it, it's going to say, "Oh, I don't have a screenshot since you changed something. So try it a little bit later, and you'll get one." So for this video, I paused the recording, then I went back later, and of course, my screenshot came back up. And I go in the overview under the monitoring tab. I can see all of the information, pretty much the CPU, network, VM availability, available memory, and so on. That's all built in. And that type of monitoring for you is free. It's built into your subscription and the VM cost. So that is it. That's of course, if you go with Azure Monitor or other tooling, your cost may change, but this is kind of basic out of the box VM monitoring in the Azure portal.
Yeah, it's nice to have. Good job. Good demo.
All right. I think we're going to jump into your deck. So we're going to
Right.
switch to your deck, and you're going to take over the next section, which is how do you see those VM metrics?
Exactly. So viewing the VM metrics, because again, we are creating them. We want ways to see them. Later on, we'll create dashboards. But now that we've created that VM that Pierre did, and we want to be able to check its health quickly, so you can create private dashboards or shared dashboards to quickly display those metrics you want to see versus going in and going to the overview tab and drilling down. So again, these are just the metrics that we can pull out for you. Things like CPU, or if you're using a burstable VM, CPU credits, those are nice. Like the B series, they'll sit there and collect credits. And then when it needs to burst, it'll use up credits and jump up. It's a good way to save money. There's OS disk length. If things are queuing up, you might have some slowness. Same with the network. How much activity are you seeing in there? So. And then Pierre already went over, but we have those overview graphs in that VM section. So again, you don't need to build the graphs. They're built for you. You just go to the VM and the overview page, and you get these nice little graphs of CPU, network, and disk operations, it looks like. And then again, in the portal, go to VM monitoring to see those key metrics. So if anything, you can jump in right away and select your VM and look at what's going on. But with these, we can create a dashboard, or they like to call it a KPI dashboard, which is a key performance indicator. So let's say you're beyond that threshold of 75% CPU for more than 5 minutes. So let's take a look at what's going on. Why is it at 90%? And again, the KPI dashboard just gives you more customization. It's the stuff you want to worry about. If you determine these 3 VMs are my critical VMs for production, they're customer facing, I want these in my dashboard, and I want these specific metrics are important to my application, so I want to get to those quickly. So we pin that to a dashboard, so you can kind of like a knock, have that on your screen, and you can hopefully be aware of an issue before something actually happens.
You know what I love the most about dashboards in Azure or anywhere else?
What? I have some dashboard stories.
I've had some dashboard stories, yes. The fact that you can create dashboards, and they can either be private, so for you or your management, but you can also, and you're going to show us exactly how to get that done later, right?
Yep. Right. Okay. And yep at the same time.
It's the public or the shared dashboards that I love, because you may want to inform somebody that the one manager that always comes to your desk and says, so what's the status of this? The micromanager that every 5 minutes wants to know what the status of the system is. Mm-hmm. We create a shared dashboard so they can go and check on their own without having to ask you every 5 to 10 minutes. But they can't change anything.
Yeah, read only.
Read only. So the pointy error manager, for those of us who are old enough to remember Dilbert, can't go and change stuff in your operations environment. They can just see it. Now, if they have a question based on what they see, now they can get more info. But that's what I love about dashboards. They're a huge pro of any cloud environment, and you should be using them, especially if you're in an environment where you have multiple teams that are depending on the same infrastructure.
That's a good point. But as a joke once, we did screenshot everything while it was green and put it on the dashboard, because we had a TV with our dashboard. So anyone could walk by and be like, oh, that VM's yellow. Why? But if we're like, why don't we just make it all green for now? And then they'll leave us alone. They don't know. It looks live.
Except that it's always the same metric when you do that.
True. This is more high level, at least green, yellow, red. But yeah, but I would never suggest doing that.
All right.
Back to business. So the KPI dashboard, like Pierre mentioned, you can make it shareable, and you can have read only to people above you, or people collaborate with you. You can have contributor based access. So you can use Azure RBAC because it is a what do you call it? A resource. So just like in your subscription, you add owners and contributors and resource groups, you can do that with dashboards as well. So you can give someone contributor access, read access, and make them a part of it as much as you want. And then you can always make a private copy.
Remember that the RBAC role that you was addressing is on the dashboard. So if somebody's got contributor, they can change the dashboard. Doesn't mean that they can change the thing that it's reporting on.
Right. And so they might not have visibility to certain resources. So on the dashboard, it won't show up. So that does play into that as well. And then there's an AK MS link I put in there, just going over the dashboards, how to create them, the permission structure, stuff like that. So
very cool.
Yeah. And now we can go to my great demo video. Hopefully it's as good as yours, Pierre. So here we're in the Azure portal, and I use the sandbox. So I went ahead and created that Linux VM. And again, this might be be a little redundant for you, but it's just, again, the Learn modules having you see that here we can see all those metrics in the overview tab. We created that CPU graph, but now we want to pin it to a dashboard so we can see it all the time. So here I'm going to go save, pin to dashboard. And I want to share one. So I'm going to create this Learn Live one and pin it to the Learn Live dashboard. I want Pierre to be able to see how our band's doing here. And then I click on metrics, and I'm going to add in another metric, the percentage CPU that he had already created. But for the sake of the environment, we have to recreate it here. And pin it to the dashboard. So now it's always going to be there. I don't have to recreate this metric for this VM. I can always visit it on my KPI dashboard. And here I have it a few times because I was playing around, but it's nice to see that you can go and edit and move these tiles around. There's other tiles available to you as well. You can view groups, and you can have the time on there. So you can make it as pretty as you want if you're very creative. But you can have metrics of other VMs up there as well, like I mentioned before, because if maybe it's an application group, you have your front end and your back end. And then obviously time settings. I don't know why you want over the 4 hours unless it was some maybe funky issue. I'd want more granular. And then have it refresh so it's not that stale metric, as Pierre mentioned too. So you want your dashboard refreshing. So we set it up and then save. And then here's your KPI dashboard.
Or your Learn Live dashboard in this case.
Right.
You went off script. You named it your own.
Hey, you went off script and did it in your own environment. So, I mean.
I did. I admit. Sorry.
That's okay. But hopefully that wasn't too fast. I mean, if you already have your graphs made, you just pin it to dashboard, and then you have your dashboard. And later I'll show how to do a private one, because you might want to have that sneaky private one that oh my god, stuff's going down, I need to look at it. But
having private and shared dashboards is really useful. Because the private dashboard, like if you're responsible for, let's say, and as our friend earlier, Gavin was asking, because he was saying he was like about a web server. If you're the web administrator and all you care about is the web servers, you can create yourself a dashboard that has your multiple web servers, and you could have a number of connections per server. You can all kinds of different metrics for IIS or for Apache or for whatever workloads or web server you're running on it. So you can create your own dashboards that fits your own need.
Exactly.
But your boss may want to know more about not just the web server, but the network that it's running in, and the storage account, and how many people have bought a ticket to your so that might be another system somewhere that feeds info into a dashboard item that you would put on there. So different types of dashboards for different perspectives or reasons.
Right. And I believe we have a knowledge check we can do with the audience. That's always fun. The Learn Live poll, knowledge check.
Yes. So I think where is the? Oh, there it is.
There it is.
So scan the QR code. You can actually participate in this poll. So give us your answer and vote on which your answer is. So want to go through the question, Amy?
Sure. So you want to track the average CPU usage of your Azure Virtual Machine over the last 7 days. What is the most straightforward way to do this? So 2 might be right, but what's the most straightforward? A, view the metrics for the virtual machine on the overview page and set the range to the last 7 days. B, view the metrics for the virtual machine each day and store the values for each of the last 7 days in a spreadsheet. Sounds fun. C, view the metric in the monitor section by creating a graph and set the range to the last 7 days. Well, I love spreadsheets.
Excel was my mojo back in the day, but I don't think I would want to be able to do that for every single event or questions to like dump the CSV, export and play it and go into a spreadsheet.
And that's
No,
the work
I think I'm going to dismiss B on that one. So it's A or C.
Yeah. So C is view the metric and monitor, but create a graph. But I think we learned that we could just jump into that overview section, right? So
that's correct.
Okay, so let's see if we're right. And it looks like the audience, the majority is voting A. Nice. Got 75%
of voters.
Right, so let's see what happens. Yeah. A. I like being right. Good job,
I'm always
everyone.
right.
I'm always right. Well, I mean, we can make them all
when I'm wrong.
Except when I'm wrong. That's a way to look at it. I like your positive attitude. All right, I believe there's another question.
Yes.
Do you want to run this one or you want?
Sure.
Okay.
So what do you do? What do you have to install or create to store the simple diagnostic, boot diagnostic in Azure? On that one, I think we talked about this. If we look at A, install the Azure Diagnostic extension. I don't remember doing anything about that.
No.
You don't have to install or create anything additional to store the diagnostic log in Azure.
You did more work in that demo than I don't know.
Well, I think if we remember the list of any, we can even go back to the exercises. There were 2 sets of command. The first one was to create a storage account with a random account name. And C, what you need to create is an Azure storage account. So let's see what the
no pun intended. Let's see
what our audience replies to this. Q2, we've got
majority.
66% have said C, 1% has said A, and the answer is.
Oh, that's me. C.
That's you. C.
Yeah. So it's just as easy as creating a storage account versus deploying an extension.
Yes. The extensions, and I think we're going to look at that in the next section, but there are multiple extensions for multiple things that you may want to do. Like Azure Monitor has its own extensions, and there are other things that you can add extensions to your VMs for. But diagnostic or boot diagnostic is not one of them.
Yeah, you need a storage account for the boot diagnostics. It's pretty basic.
Because really, what would happen if you deployed a virtual machine using a CI/CD pipeline where it's automated and you're not sitting at the desk at the portal while it's deploying, and there's an error in the boot on the first boot before you've had a chance to deploy an extension to it. So basic, just in the storage account. Okay,
right.
Cool.
I think we're back to you. Or no, we're on me still.
No, that's you again.
Like, we're back to you. No. Okay, so now yeah, we kind of jumped the gun in there in the audience, but that's okay because we're going to go over it. The configuring the Azure Diagnostics extension, and what that does, it brings more granularity. We don't just get basic CPU usage. We can get more granular to the metrics that we want to see on our very important VMs. So in this module section, we're going to go over configuring that Azure Diagnostics section. So it's capturing the guest OS performance and the virtual machine metrics. So using that Azure Monitor agent. And Pierre had mentioned this, and when we were getting ready for this, that some things are going legacy. So I was like, good point. So the log analytics agent is going to be legacy after August 2024. So if you deploy anything new or you have stuff using the old agent, it's good to start convert to the newer agent, because the Azure Monitor agent is going to replace log analytics agent, the Telegraph agent. And there's another link there for you to go to see, how much time you have and which agents do what. So it's good to be in the know. And again, so when we install the Azure Monitor agent, we're going to use a data collection rule. So that's where you can put your scope of VMs, what's important to you, which metrics or logs are important to you. And then we need a destination to store the metrics so we can put that in our dashboard.
Okay. Are you going to cover, just a side note here, are you going to cover the differences in the agent? Because we're in the part of we're in the era where we're in transit from the old agent to the new agent. Are you kind of covering that?
I kind of just did, where I was saying the log analytics agent is going. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I was
Okay.
answering a question on YouTube. So I missed that part.
Oh, no problem.
But you'll
Yeah,
see,
because I remember you mentioning how important it is.
it's very important, but it's also when you're looking at some portals sometimes, or you'll get that message that the agent is to be deprecated. You still got time. But if you see that message, don't panic. It's just letting you know that you need to start looking at the migration of your agent from one to the other.
Right.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So again, when we install this agent, we're going to use a data collection rule. And I said you could pick a scope of VMs, scope of metrics, and the destination to store the data. And here's showing where, if you're following along, you create this My Performance metrics and you're in your subscription, and we define the rules and the scope and the logs to be collected. And then we can also, I am sorry. We can also have performance counters collected, can be either basic or you can do a custom list. But I believe in this module, we go with the basic just for the sake of time. And after that, as Pierre mentioned before, keep in mind costs. You don't want to monitor all the things. Analytics logs, it's pay as you go, or you can commit, like I'm going to have 100 gigs a day. So then you can get some savings on that. Data retention free for 31 days, but then they charge you, a gig a month, whatever dollar amount per gig per month.
Yeah.
And then also for alert rules metric, it's billed each time that series is monitored. Log is billed by the interval at which the query is running. So if you're running this query over and over, you're going to get charged each time. Activity log alert, it's limited to 100 rules per subscription, but it's no cost. But you don't want a bunch of activity log alerts. And then there's a link there as well. Oh, we should have the AKMS, but we can always put it in the chat for pricing if you need to look up pricing for all those monitoring costs.
I think our producer just did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks, Ryan.
It's important to know when we're talking about data retention, the 31 day that's included, that's a rolling 31 day window. So on the 32nd day, the day one will fall off in terms of data.
Yeah.
Now there are some companies out there that do a data retention of like 5 hours or 6 hours, because they're only interested is what's the status of my environment now. This is not meant to be like historical data trending over the last year or so on. This is what's the health of my system. So we have to build our scenarios and our strategies for monitoring with that in mind.
That's a good point. So I believe next is we're going to go through configuring the Azure Diagnostics extension. So I have a second video that we'll put up, or I can pretend I'm typing. So we're back in the portal, and I'm going to pull up the monitoring section, Azure Monitor, and go to diagnostics. I'm sorry, data collection rules. I'm like all about diagnostic here. So we're going to create that rule. So we have to give it a name, that my performance metric. And it's in that sandbox subscription, which I think is really cool that we do the sandbox. And it's a Linux box that we deployed.
Yep.
But I realize it's an East US 2. You have to deploy to the same region. And now we select our resources. So this is where you could select maybe a resource group. But here we're just selecting that virtual machine we created. And we'll see it pop up, and then we can select it and apply. So now we have a resource. And now which data do we want to report on? So we select source type, and we're going to select just those basic performance counters, like CPU, memory, disk, network. And now destination, where we're going to store this information, and we're going to store it in Azure Monitor Metrics. So we're ready to review and create. And yes, thank goodness for video editing, because this, it took a little bit, so I sped it up for you. It deploys, it's deploying the agent. It's got to start gathering metrics. So it was a good maybe 5 to 10 minutes overall, not for just the agent deployment. So I'm going back to the VM. And there's just a few ways to see if the agent was installed. You can scroll down and go to extensions and applications. There we go. You can see Azure Monitor Linux agent, dependency agent, OMS agent. And then another way is just going to the VM itself and properties, and you can see extensions and applications here. So we successfully deployed the agent, and now let's see if we can get those metrics that we want. So go down to metrics, and now this took a bit to it. I was waiting for the metric, the custom one to come out, and there we go. So that took a while too. So if you're doing this right now, be patient. The Linux guest metric will show up, and now we can type in the net bytes total and max. And we're going to save it to a dashboard. This time I'm going to keep it private because, I don't want to share it with anyone. I don't know. I just created private to show the difference between a public shareable one or private. So this one, I'm just going to create the KPI dashboard and pin it. And yes, it wasn't existing. I had to create new. So it's pinning to the dashboard, and we go on to the next metric. So you go back to metrics, and come on, there we go. And then we're going to pull down that namespace of custom Azure VM. And then we're going to look up memory available percentage and max. And then we're going to go on to add that to the dashboard. So it's not too bad once you get this custom agent going. And I believe there's one more metric. So we'll go back to metrics. And we'll select that custom guest metric. And we'll do CPU. This will be more granular than the built-in one. So do the active usage and max. And pin to the dashboard, KPI. And yeah, I wasn't having many metrics come up at the time, but here we're going to switch from my Learn Live dashboard that I went off script. And here's a KPI one. So now I have those granular metrics where, again, we can customize it, the tiles, we can drill down, we can change the time range or the date range. You can set to auto refresh, but now it's more granular and it's running with an agent. And that,
the agent, as you mentioned earlier, the agent is required to see what's going on inside of the guest VM.
Mm-hmm.
or the guest operating system on the VM, sorry, to be precise.
Right. Exactly. So it's just to get the additional data.
Yeah.
And we can just go back to the slide. And yeah, what we covered, installed that monitor agent using the data collection rules. We confirmed it was running. We created the custom KPI dashboard, added free memory, CPU usage, and then we looked at our new dashboard. So that was pretty cool. Right.
Yep. That is really, really cool.
And then I think Pierre is going to go over diagnostic case studies.
Yeah. So, Mr. Producer, okay, thank you. Ryan is on the ball. It's like,
I love it.
Switching decks before we even tell him what to do it. Thank you so much. All right. So, diagnostic data or case studies. This section basically kind of walks you through how to get some of the information and what you can do with it. So if we're looking at this particular one, and the scenario that it's in there is like our band is on tour next month, and we've got issues other than being on tour next month and not knowing how to play an instrument. So in some cases, this information can be surfaced through metrics. So when we look at some of those issues, so we may have this other band that is being fronted by our old lead singer. So they're our nemesis, and we don't like them very much, and they hate us. So they're trying to do a DDoS attack on our portal so that nobody will buy tickets for us.
What the heck?
What the heck? I know.
Yeah. We're lovable. We can't play, but we're nice people.
Yeah. So under our system, and I didn't go through and set it up, but you have the opportunity in there to go and get like a metrics workspace for public IP. So that's not about the machine itself or the VM itself or the guest OS, but it's about the underlying structure that it's sitting on. So the IP address, is there a DDoS attack happening to your IP address at this point? So right now, like all of the exercises that we've done have been about that particular VM and what's running in it. But you have to think that when you're examining what's happening in your environment, that it may have dependencies. We did talk about dependencies at one point. So with Azure Monitor and Metrics, based on the resources and the namespaces that you're using, you can get metrics and you can add those to your shared or private dashboards. All of the dependencies that your web server is sitting on, or your workload, regardless what it may be. In our case, because we're trying to sell tickets, it's our web servers. But is it under a DDoS attack? So those are parts of stuff that you can set up your environment to monitor.
And DDoS, just in case, denial of service attack, just in case no one knows. Yeah.
Yes.
So you peg something and it can't respond. It's overloaded.
And maybe they sent one of our band member a loaded email with this with some payload that would compromise our system, and now they've put something on our web servers that pins the CPU to the end to 100%, so that nobody else will be able to even see where we're going to play next month. Well, we can start monitoring the advanced behavior of our system based on the agent that Amy put in earlier. So increased CPU loads. That's one thing. And it's all based on action groups. You know what? Why don't I take you through a video on how to get it done? Because I'm going to show you some screenshots in the deck, and then I'm going to show you the exact same screenshots in the video. So, Mr. Producer, if we go to video 2, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So if we look at our system, we have our monitored Linux VM. And if I go to metrics, we have the same thing as what you went through earlier. So, but we have also alerts. And the alert, in our case, we don't have any, so we're going to create one. And here we have three items. We can create the rule itself, we can create the action group, or a alert processing rule. The difference is, well, the alert rule is what's going on and what do I do with it. The action group is when I want to do something with it, with the alert, who and what am I doing? So you can set those up separately. And the alert processing rule is, if I'm processing that rule, is there another rule that I need to process as well together? Like if something's happening here, do I also need to check over there? So these are the different types of rules that you're going to have in your alerting. So in this case, because it's pretty straightforward, we're going to create just a rule. And now we have at the top, you can see that we have signal type, and that signal type could be multiple things. And we have monitoring service. So the signal type could be a metric or a log. Is it something that we've logged into our application? If it was a custom built application, there's something that my code injected into the log to let me know that something has gone wrong. Is it an activity log? Is it a resource health that are reported differently on Azure, being an Azure native or a OS running on a VM, or a log of an application, and so on, so that there's different signal type. So in our case, I'm just going to say all of them and keep it at that. Monitoring service is also because it can come from different locations. So I'm going to say all. And I want to see the percentage CPU. So do I want to get the average or do I want to get the maximum? So in this case, I'm just going to keep it to an average. And then I get to set my rules as to, do I want to have it equal, greater than, smaller than? Remember when I talked about having that sweet spot, so you could have something that's greater than or something that's lower than? This is how you would set up. So you may have multiple alerts for multiple thresholds on the same metric or the same measurement. So in this case, I'm going to go greater or equal to 90%. When do I check and my look back period? So when do I check? So the check every 1 minute. That's easy to know. Look back period is as it happened multiple times within that 5 minutes. But if it hadn't happened in the last 5 minutes, then we're good. Like the event has kind of gone away. We talked about that as well earlier.
The magical self-healing.
The magical self-healing, exactly. Now I've got my condition. What do I do with it? So in this case, I'm going to create an action group. If I already had action groups created, I could just select one. And this one is in my own subscription, in my resource group. I'm going to call this email alert. I'm going to give it a display name. You could have multiple email alerts with different display names. And then what am I going to do for notifications? So in this case, I'm just going to say, I'm going to email. It could be an email, an SMS message, a push, a voice. It's funny that they've removed the pager item from it, but
hey,
there.
We still use pagers. If you're in a hospital, they still use pagers.
I know. So now I've got my email, and I'm sorry, but I don't want to have my inbox full, so I blurred what my actual email is. Could be a voice. This part here is very interesting. So enable the common alert schema. For an email alert, it's really not necessary. However, as you will see in a couple minutes, if you're sending that alert, let's say to remember we talked about the workflow option. If I'm sending this to a function, or if I'm sending this to a run book that will actually do something, some code, I can pass the schema along. So it's got the schema of all of the information about that alert. So the machine that's running on, who set it up, the timing, the data, like all of the granular data will be passed along with the alert. Do you want to see that in an email? Possibly not. So that's why in there we can say whether or not you're going to include it or not.
That's nice.
So in this case, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to click OK. So now I've got my my email notification done. Next, you see you've got an action. So it's different than a notification. The first one was just to let me know in an email that something is going on, but I may want to still do something and have an action based on that same alert. But I don't have, in this case, I just wanted to have a notification, so I'm not going to create it. But there's your items that you can have. So your automation runbook, your Azure function, you can send it something else to a logic app, and so on. So it's up to you as to what you want to do with that action once it's done. Now the tags, I'm a big fan of tagging my environment. So because this is in my own environment, I've put in a category as a demo. So when I clean up later, I can clean up those rules. And it goes out and creates the rules. So I've got my action groups and created. Now in the details, and I think you mentioned that earlier, the red, the yellow. So in my severity, you can set what the severity is. And of course, severity is always subjective. Yes. What is an emergency for you may not be an emergency for me. And the same. So it gives you an opportunity to set that severity. So we're set that severity, give it a name, a description, meaningful description, because like 6 months from now, when you go back and look into what that detail was, if there's no description, you're not going to know why you created this thing. Because of course our documentation is up to date, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's our CMDB.
So now, so I've got my done. Normally I would go tag it and I create my rule. So now I've got my alert with the notification group, an action team that will like send my notification. Now how we trigger it.
Oh, that's the fun part.
That's the fun part. Normally you just sit in front of your machine and wait for something to happen. But in our case, because this is a demo and we want to actually show you, I'm going to SSH into that Linux VM that we created earlier. And because this is the first time I log into it, I'm going to do an update to it. And then I'm going to install a little utility to stress the CPU. So sudo apt-get install stress. And now I'm going to run a stress test on that CPU for a short amount of time. Now, with the magic of video, I'm going to get into the future and go see. And I didn't show you on the video, but I've got my rule set up and I've got my dashboards set up. And the dashboard should be able to tell me whether or not my my CPU is gone. Oh, I forgot to put it in. So let me go and put that information. So go there, change for the last 30 minutes. And I can see that I've pinned the CPU at 100. So I should have gotten an email. I'll go to my inbox on my other monitor, which is why the video didn't catch it, and open the message that says my Azure Monitor alert was triggered. My web server CPU running hot. That's the description we gave. You can click on the button and see it in the portal. So if you're not already in the portal, you would click on that and get right to the alert that our system has generated. And that would be it for the demo. So we go back to the deck. So if we've looked at our exercise, we've looked at what we can do with the on how we can use the diagnostic data in our environment. We look at adding dependency data from other resources that our system, that our workload, because no workload lives in a bubble, especially if you're in the cloud. You always have dependency. You have a virtual network dependency. You have a public IP dependencies, firewall dependencies, because of course, if you're exposing a workload to the internet and you're not putting a firewall on in front of it, get out. No. anyway, so that's the idea. Was once you've got all that data, that when Amy, you did a wonderful job to show us how you integrate and get that data from the VM, but also from the guest OS. Now, once you've got all of that, what do you do with it? And the biggest thing is you create alerts, and those alerts drive either notification or actions for you to address issues into our environment. So in this case, we created the alert, we selected the resource, we created a condition, and those conditions, you can have multiple conditions for the same type of alerts. We added an action, we triggered it, and we noticed that it went in. Now, I'm going to go completely off script here because we still have a little bit of time. I got 10 minutes. And where is my mailbox? Yes, so let me bring it here. Since I ran this, I went back into my inbox, and I ran this, and I just kind of forgot about it. When it resolved itself, because the stress test was only for a short amount of time, when it resolved itself and the stress, it wasn't above 90 in the last 5 minutes. Remember the look back? So it resolved itself, but it told me that it resolved itself. So if you get to work in the morning and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of alerts and you got one that says resolved, you still, or if that's the only one you notice that it's resolved, you know something happened. Or maybe it's time for you to start and look at your environment.
Right.
Make sense?
Definitely.
Okay. All right. So in summary, identify your metrics, your diagnostic data that you can collect for your virtual machine and the OSs that are running on it. We looked at configuring and monitoring the virtual machines to use the monitoring data to diagnose problems. Like, I think
we were selling so many tickets, our CPU went up.
Exactly. But now I have to figure out which instrument I'm going to play, because apparently we got a gig next week and nobody told me.
Well, you could play a hockey stick. I don't know.
Yes. All right. What else do we have?
I mean, we covered the whole module. If there's any questions, I could point to the more resources.
Yeah.
People want to.
So the resources was everything that we've kind of talked about today. There's a list of resources that are available to you. So scan that QR code or go to that wonderful short link, aka.ms, capital A, J3UPM. It would have been just as easy to make it into a vanity URL, but anyway. I think that was it for us. Make sure that you complete, you can do it again because it's Learn, it's free. So you can run through it. You can tell your friends about it. If somebody in your environment is not familiar with it, but is interested or is responsible for monitoring your environment, give them that URL, send them that QR code. Let them know
all in the
that
sandbox.
It's all in the sandbox. Doesn't cost you a cent. I mentioned to a keyboard warrior earlier on YouTube that he was saying that he's a broke developer as well. So
I hear you.
Yep.
And then I think we have another session coming up. Next slide. Yeah.
That's right.
In the series. You won't
want
want
to
to
cover
miss
this one?
Sure. Don't miss exploring Azure storage services and creating an Azure storage account. So it's next up in the series, February 2nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And you continue your learning by following along. It looks like the link, though, might be, because it's Learn Live GitHub Actions. So might be a typo there for the Azure storage account. But
go back if we go back a couple of slides, we'll notice that there are resources, and the resources probably will have a link to where the schedule is. So,
right.
With that being said, Amy, this was wonderful.
Yeah, this is great. Great study hall session for IaaS. I mean, it's a great way to get started in cloud.
Yeah.
To get started. So,
all right.
Happy to help you.
The band has started, so I guess we're getting the hook.
We're going on tour.
We're going on tour. I didn't know. All right, everybody watching, please let us know in the comments what you think. What can we do better? Are there specific subjects that you would like us to cover?
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your feedback and engage with you. I am, as you can see in my little lower third here, on Twitter at Wired Canuck. And Amy can be found at, how do you pronounce that?
Weird Girl.
Yeah, I'm never saying that in public.
It's from a long time ago, but it's stuck. So Weird Girl, I'm always on Twitter, happy to chat and harass Wired Canuck. So he's fun.
That's right.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Cheers.